In this session, we'll be looking at the issue of increasing the Caribbean's digital footprint. Increasing the Caribbean's digital footprint. This issue is one that you will hear repeatedly inside the sessions dealing with the CAPE digital media syllabus. And to understand what is necessary to increase the Caribbean's digital footprint, we must first look at what is the context within which the Caribbean is taking its place on the whole global digital media landscape. But to do that, we have to ask ourselves, well, what's digital media and what's all the fuss about? I mean, we all know that we are living in a time when we are increasingly surrounded by technology and technology-based content. Digital media, for us, for the purposes of this presentation, we'll be looking at the kinds of content that is produced using the digital technology. Now, for those of us who have in one way or the other been impacted by technology, whether it's through the use of smartphones or through the use of the internet or through the use of multimedia in our jobs or at home, we know that digital media can be quite exciting, quite interesting, very engaging. Most times it's quite interactive. But for this session, we want to look behind that excitement and behind that interaction, because digital media can also be very complex and quite complicated. For some people, it's also quite confusing. So what are the implications of living in a digital age? Let's explore. I think it's safe to say that greater and greater reliance is being placed on digital technologies and digital content. Our countries here in the Caribbean, but also around the world, have little choice but to transition citizens to new models of technology-based development. You would have heard the term digital immigrant and digital native being applied to describe societies and individuals' place in this new digital world. We want to understand the implications of living in this digital age. We are surrounded by mobile applications. We are increasingly seeing services being provided through new tools like tablets and kiosks and mobile phones. The issue of local content keeps coming up. Do we have enough of it? How do we create it? How do we encourage it? Distance learning is the objective and the desire of our education institutions as they seek to reach new audiences and share knowledge further and further afield. We hear talk of e-business and e-government, telemedicine. We know for countries with a concern about security that national security, surveillance, and management now places greater and greater reliance and dependency on technology and technology systems. We live in a region that is vulnerable to natural disasters such as hurricanes and earthquakes. Disaster preparedness as a field is also seeing increasingly the use of technology to overcome the realities of living here in the Caribbean. So again, it's safe to say that we have to put greater reliance on technology, and we are placing greater and greater trust in technological systems as we go deeper and deeper into the digital age. But as we move deeper and deeper into the digital age, there are some things, there are some statements, there are some positions that are recurring, whether you're in Suriname or you're in Belize, whether you're in Trinidad and Tobago or you are in Jamaica. There are things governments and countries and businesses are saying about how this digital era will play itself out. We hear talk of knowledge-based societies, ICT-based industries, or information and communication and technology-based industries. I'm sure you would have heard talk about e-government or pushing government services online onto the internet so more citizens can access them. In many countries, there is talk of connected schools and connected businesses and connected citizens. Everything, it seems, now wants to be connected. But if we say that we want these things, if we say that we can use the technology for achieving our development goals, if we say that we can use the technology for better governance, for functional Caribbean integration, for cloud computing or for mobile services, if we say these things, then what must be the response of the people, the individuals, the countries charged with delivering this dream and making it a reality? I believe it is safe to say that the survival of the region, each country in this region, is now inextricably linked to the extent to which we can quickly and optimally develop and leverage our technology resource. And so if the Caribbean has to address this, then we need to act now to build that capacity to move forward. If we're living in a world that is increasingly dependent on technology, then we must, as a region, as countries, as citizens, do our part in creating that new technology-based capacity. Now, how does that relate to content and digital media? Well, the technology is nothing without an interface with the society that it serves. Content serves as that interface. When we talk about mobile phones, we can't talk about them as dead or inert gadgets. We talk about them in the context of their ability to connect us one to the other. If we talk about websites, we're not talking about online pages. We're talking about a mechanism to always have access to content, information, and knowledge that we're seeking. So if we understand that, then we should also understand that if we do not build a strong base of Caribbean content, then we risk remaining mere consumers of foreign content. We risk diminishing our incentive to produce, to share, and to export our own knowledge, our own culture, and our own innovations. We need to act because we cannot risk losing our unique identity and our place on the global digital landscape. And that's where this issue of increasing the Caribbean digital footprint comes in. If we have to increase our footprint in the digital media space, then we have to understand what gives our feet the weight it needs to create a lasting impression in the sands of our digital media world. So that is the context for this session. It's against the backdrop of the reality of our responsibility to ensure that we are adequately, appropriately, and comprehensively represented in this new digital world that we want to speak about the need to increase the Caribbean's digital footprint. What is that footprint? How do we give it weight? How do we allow it to leave a lasting and meaningful impression in the sands of time? The context for this session is that digital media plays a significant role not only in the development of our economies, but most importantly, in the securing of our cultural identity. The second context for this session is that we have to understand that at present, there is a relatively limited representation of Caribbean content online, relative to our cultural richness and to our creative capacity. The implication here is that there is a very real risk that we can unwittingly cede control of critical elements of our cultural identity, who we are as a people, what we represent as a society. Our technical, intellectual, and economic security could be jeopardized if we do not pay heed to the requirement to deliberately and consciously make our mark in the online world. But what is this world? And what is this online space within which we are being required to make our mark? Is it just the internet? Is it just the World Wide Web? Or is it the entire composite of technology-based platforms and tools that are being used to communicate culture, values, services, norms, practices, that are being used to optimize systems, increase businesses, improve competitiveness? What is this footprint? Is it simply more Caribbean stories online or more Caribbean websites? Let's look at how the internet has evolved as a platform in our modern world to try and get answers to these questions. Who is the internet important to? And why? Let's take a look first at national development, a term that we hear often. And we know and we have heard that national development is necessary for countries to advance. We all want our countries to keep moving forward. Technology is important to government. The internet is important to technology. Governments are using technology for service delivery. What kind of service? They're using it for education, for tourism, agriculture, health, telecommunications, online procurement, you name it, and technology has had an impact on how governments deliver services to citizens. But technology is not only important to governments in terms of its ability to allow them to deliver their services. Technology also brings very real employment opportunities. Technology also allows governments to consider new options for economic diversification. Bottom line is this: technology is important to government. But who else is technology important to? Technology is important to citizens, but not just technology generic. Efficient, affordable technology is important to citizens. We all have a desire to access services more conveniently, more efficiently. There is an entire entrepreneurial class that is seeking to seize the opportunities of the information age, something that we hear of often, and that we need to encourage and facilitate here at home. Technology also allows people to do research, to empower themselves, to create for themselves opportunities that would not necessarily have existed without it. Technology provides access. It's very important to citizens, to individuals, to communities. But technology is also important to the private sector, to businesses. It drives their capacity to deliver services. It drives growth, but it also drives profit. The private sector is well aware that technology, the internet, the tools of the digital era provide them with access to new markets, provides them with increased market share opportunity, and gives higher margin, value-added services that they can give to their customers and to their target groups. Technology is the foundation for business innovation. So if we understand this, that technology is important to governments, to citizens, to the private sector, then we can use that as a basis for examining how trends in technology in the Caribbean today are positively affecting and positively impacting our ability to create a digital footprint. What are some of these positive emerging trends? Well, we know that increasingly schools are deploying technology in the classrooms. Some governments have gone as far as giving laptops to children. Others are even providing tablets or touchscreen devices. There is an increased appetite for internet-based services. You hear talk of the connected classroom. You hear talk of higher mobile penetration rates. More people with more smart mobile devices in their pockets connected to the internet. We're also aware that there is a huge emphasis right now on innovation and the need for our countries and our businesses to be more innovative. All of these things require new policy developments, and our governments across the region are wrestling with the demands of and the challenges of facilitating and creating an environment in which it is easier and easier for our societies to adopt technology. So what do we have and what do we see? We see growing internet usage. We see growing internet penetration. We see increased awareness of the requirement to provide more relevant content, or, let me put it differently, to provide content that is more relevant to our needs. And we are aware that these are important and very fundamental platforms for increasing our digital footprint. Across the region, from the north to the south, from the east to the west, we can see increased content production, the packaging of local content for global consumption. We see governments taking more e-initiatives and putting more of their services and more of their information online. And these are very positive trends. It's the response of the region to the unstoppable press of the technology age. But there has to be something beyond the technology that we have to get. One Calypsonian, David Rudder, I think, put it this way: between the wrist and the rubber, there is a new truth to discover. And we want to understand what's between the ambitions and the intentions that we have for using technology and the reality of the environment within which we now exist. So let's take a look at some of the key drivers for change. What I'm trying to do here is to allow you to understand the context within which this digital footprint has to be created. Are we simply being driven by what's happening everywhere else, or are we looking within to understand what's happening in our societies? Are we trying to seize the benefits and the opportunities of digital media simply because everyone else is? Or are we recognizing that without greater and greater adoption of technology-based tools, our societies will have a diminished chance of taking its rightful place in the global society? If we have to answer these questions, then we have to understand what's behind the current technological revolution. Why is there this flood, this plethora of digital content everywhere we look? What are some of the key drivers for change? I want to bring your mind to just a few. What's happening now within society is that the technology is literally altering attitudes, behaviors, expectations. And I want you to focus on this one. Information and communication technology, the access people have through the internet and other multimedia platforms, is actually literally altering people's sense of empowerment vis-a-vis formal authority structures. There is a new expectation of how I interface with my government, of how I interface with my employer. And these trends, these developments are causing disruptions across the world and right here at home. These are the drivers within which we are saying our footprint needs to be increased. Attitudes are changing, behaviors are changing, expectations are changing, and we have to have a response. But there is more. These attitudes and behaviors are changing against the backdrop of some specific Caribbean issues. As a region, we are diminishing in our global competitiveness. And there are reports that you can send students over and off to find that show the Caribbean's economic weakening over the past few decades. Another real regional issue is massive hemorrhaging of qualified human resources. This is something that we have to confront as a region. And thirdly, there is the importation of what some consider to be highly destructive, highly corrosive, highly toxic cultures and content from other countries and other societies and other cultures. Now, why is this important for us? What do these things all portend? Well, the implication for this, the diminishing global competitiveness, the hemorrhaging of human resource, the importation of destructive cultural norms and trends, has to be juxtaposed against the fading sense of our Caribbean identity. The more the content that we consume comes from outside, the more we naturally associate with that content and the cultures from which that content comes. The more content that we create locally or regionally, the easier it is for successive generations to understand their place in the Caribbean civilization and in Caribbean society. And also, the easier it is for them to understand their place in the global society as Caribbean citizens. Well, this is a very fundamental point. We are still talking here about the CAPE Digital Media Syllabus. And we are saying that we want this syllabus to be a part of the changing of the landscape as it relates to creating content for our citizens and our societies. But we can't talk that if we don't understand what we are confronting, the issues that we are battling, the things that we are contending with. And that conversation has to take place within our schools, within our classrooms. The students have a right to know why it is important for them to seize the opportunities of the digital age. They have a right to understand what is at stake, what is at risk, if they are to produce the kinds of products that are needed to safeguard not just our economic state, but our cultural well-being. That's the Caribbean reality. So, the implication I want us to understand that as small countries with small markets, we stand the best chance of success if we explore and if we entertain and if we engage regional opportunities. Each country has its own unique identity and its own unique expression. But as a region, we also have a unique identity and a very unique global expression. We must, through this program, through the content that we develop, through the emphases that we put before our students, we must create a sense of a responsibility to safeguard that regional opportunity, to set local initiatives and local needs and the identification of local solutions within the context of a Caribbean reality. That's the implication here. That we can focus on national issues while at the same time creating a Caribbean consciousness. and there is no dichotomy. There is no contradiction. And this is something that students have to debate as they walk through this digital media syllabus. That when we talk about increasing the footprint and creating relevant local digital content, what we're talking about is safeguarding the Caribbean identity, the thing that makes us uniquely who we are. And to do that, we have to safeguard our national culture and our national identity. The sum total of safeguarding our national interests is that we, by default, safeguard our regional interests. So, is this mission impossible? Is this a pie in the sky dream? Is this something that we can't reach for or can't attain? No, I don't think so. I think if you scan online now, if you look at what is already happening, unsolicited, unstructured, unformatted in the online space, you can already see that there are groups, pockets of creativity, groups of individuals who understand that this platform that gives such wonderful global benefits can also give very significant local benefits. If you scan online, you'll also recognize that the world is watching, that there are people who want to find out who we are, what we love, why we do what we do, and they can't easily now find those answers. So the interesting thing is this: while we safeguard our local culture and our local identity, we're also making a very profound and very positive statement to the global community. We are here. We are ready. We are able to take our place in the online world. So what's the other reality as we consider some of the risks and challenges? Well, the other reality is very positive. The human resource potential to overcome the challenges that we face today exists. We have the technology, we have access, and we have the creative capacity to implement the digital space and to create the digital landscape that we know is so important for our society. What we face now really is more a challenge of paradigm than of technical possibility. And we want to make sure that as we go through this CAPE digital media syllabus, that we can actually change that paradigm. The paradigm that says there is no local content, or we can't produce at the level of excellence or with the consistency that we are seeing in other societies and in other cultures and in other countries. We want to create a paradigm that says we can make the transition from content consumers, those who only know how to download and to search out what others have put there. We can make the transition from content consumers to content producers. We can create the content that is most relevant to who we are. So the opportunity before us is to define a clear set of steps, some actionable priorities to counter the very real challenges that we face. To take these steps requires this. It requires more Caribbean content. To make that impression in the sand, to increase the weight of that digital footprint, we have to produce the content. And the content we produce must be based on native strengths, shaped to match local needs and to match our own preferred vision for our future. I'm sharing this with you because I want you to share this with your students as well. This is the opportunity before us. This is what we can do. This is what we must do to take our place in the global digital landscape.